so that we can see how Jesus is not just the Messiah. He is the supernatural food from heaven. He is the new manna that the Jews were waiting for, and how He gives us to this in Holy Communion, which should be received, if we can, every single day. This is a very powerful testimony, too, by the way, as a kind of an apologetic side note. I'm sure you are aware of the fact that there are different Christian denominations that debate how frequently the Lord's Supper should be celebrated, right? If you know about this, some Christian groups will say, well, it should only be on Sundays, once a week. Others will say it should be monthly. Others will say maybe 4 times a year, maybe just once a year, right? Why do you Catholics have daily Mass? I mean, aren't you kind of taking it overboard? Aren't you going overboard with this Eucharist thing? Well, I don't know. If the Eucharist is the manna of the new covenant, then how often should we be celebrating it? Every single day. It seems pretty clear, doesn't it, when you look at John's Gospel, what the basis for our celebration of daily Mass really is. It's right there in the words of Christ Himself. So, John chapter 6 lays out very clearly that Jesus is our Eucharistic food, our supernatural food. But what about John chapter 4 and our supernatural drink? Let's back up for a minute and go look at this passage. And I want to spend a little bit even more time looking at the famous story of Jesus, the Samaritan woman, and the living water. Because it's not just imagery of food that John uses in his gospel. It's also the imagery of supernatural drink. Now, you all know the story of Jesus, the Samaritan woman, and the living water from John chapter 4. But let's read it again. And again, I want you to pay attention to the Old Testament background that John is alluding to as he tells you the story. Usually, that Old Testament background is going to be a key to unlocking the mystery as well as the sacramental theology that's present in John's Gospel. All right, John chapter 4, verse 1 and following begins in this way. Now when the Lord knew that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, He left Judea and departed again to Galilee. He had to pass through Samaria. So He came to a city of Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. And so Jesus, wearied as He was with His journey, sat down beside the well. Notice the humanity of Jesus, fully apparent here in John's Gospel. He was weary from His journey, so He sits down beside the well. It was about the 6th hour. So what hour is that? Anybody know? About noon, right? Right around lunchtime, right? People get hungry and people get thirsty. So there came a woman of Samaria to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." For His disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. I don't know if you noticed this, but the disciples never have any food. It's funny, huh? They never have any food and they can't catch any fish to save their lives. So, disciples go off into the city to buy some food, and the Samaritan woman said to Him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a Samaritan woman?" For Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. And you could pause there again. John's giving you that little aside, telling you about the relationship between Jews and Samaritans. And if you studied the history of Israel, you'll know what he's alluding to. He's talking about the fact that since the 8th century BC, the Samaritans had their origin in the Assyrian exile, when 10 of the northern tribes of Israel were scattered among the Gentile nations by the Assyrians in 722. There was an exile of the vast majority of Israel from the Promised Land. And in their place, the Assyrians settled their own peoples, who were non-Israelites, who intermingled with the remaining Israelites who were there, and these were the origins of the Samaritans. And so the Samaritans and the Jews really had a very, tense relationship with one another. And for the Jews, they were very much a reminder of the fact that the vast majority of Israel was lost. You ever heard of the lost 10 tribes of Israel? Anybody heard of those, right? That's the origin of the lost 10 tribes of Israel, was the Assyrian exile, which repopulated the land with the Samaritans. Okay? So the Samaritans and the Jews did not get along, although Samaria was right smack in the middle of the Holy Land. You had Galilee in the north, and then Samaria in the middle of the Holy Land, and then Judea in the bottom. So if you wanted to get from Galilee to Judea, you had to pass through Samaria or go around it. And if you wanted to get from Judea to Galilee, you had to do the same thing. So Jesus here is going home from Judea to Galilee, and instead of going around Samaria, like many Jews would do just to avoid those loathsome Samaritans, he goes straight through, and he encounters the Samaritan woman. And so she's shocked. She says, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria?" For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. So then Jesus answered her, and listen to his words. "If you knew the gift of God, and who it is that is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water."